God, white, I'm with the white girl. Lino breeze with the trees. Fuck a bitch and her bestie. Then call a plug like Southwest T. Hello. You have a collect call from Guy Fisher. This was way back in 89 when the Miami boys had them homicides with them. Rich Porter, real fly nigga. Yeah, I see you niggas shining. They Uncle Ice with the double cross. RP Darnell like he was mine, nigga. Grateful the customers fuck with me. Trying to get it, OG double D. Talk that shit like Blade Icewood. Like a nigga really from the D. It's for them niggas like Eddie Jackson on 7 Mile with 100 keys. Damn. Lord forgive me for this trap shit. Sergeant Smack make it backflip. Tell he Hank with the action. With the Vato speaking Spanish. Frank Matthews how I vanish. Came back like I'm King Tut. Gold BBS's on a beamer. When Fat Cat was 10 queens up. Ball off the profit, not the re-up. Blah blah like Puerto Rican Jesus. Uptown like I'm Baby Mace.
Yo, we back. It's your boy Popalot. Mobb ties. We on our way to Headshot City. Shout out to everybody in NY, the 5 boroughs. Y'all get in the comment box. I know we got love for y'all. Now, this story is going to unfold and take place in Brooklyn. So shout out to everybody in Brooklyn. Predominantly the East New York section. And it looks like the Bedford-Stuyvesant section, but mainly the East New York section. We're going to stop in Canarsie for a little bit, but the guy that we're going to be covering today is going to be a semi-elusive figure based on what went on in his history, and it's pretty much going to be a guy by the name of John Hatcher. Some might have seen him referred to as Bloody Hatchet through the media or online. And a lot of people probably have not heard of him, which is insane. Especially, I guess, if you're stumbling on this channel and that's the shit you on. But if you heard of him, it might have been from one of two situations. You might have heard him maybe mentioned on one of these channels or one of these interviews or podcasts. I think he was referenced by Brian Glaze Gibbs, where he spoke on a situation where Puerto Rican Jesus, another well-known Brooklyn D-boy, was allegedly robbed by John Bloody Hatcher. And the other situation might have been just the media coverage where you see him say he was confessed or been rumored to been linked to 30 to 40 homicides. And besides that, everything else is kind of a blur. But we're going to try to dig a little bit deeper and kind of talk about some of the exploits that went on. Now, as far as the activity, it's pretty much going to start in 1985 and go through January 2003. And it's pretty much, like I said, going to be all centered in Brooklyn. And it's definitely a story to be told. Now, a little bit about John Hatcher. He was born in Brooklyn from all accounts, and he was raised in a section of Brooklyn called Canarsie, which if I had to speak on Canarsie, I would say it's like a upper to mid class community, or at least when I lived there. This was pre-gentrification, so who knows now. But he was actually born to like a mom and dad, good parents. I want to say they said his family owned a store. He had 2 brothers. One ended up being a minister. He had another brother that I want to say that they said was a naval officer. But by all accounts, he was a bad seed off the porch from the beginning, because due to my research, I see that he kind of fell in line with a gang called the Rugby Boys early in his youth. I want to say this is pre-high school. And even through high school, they ended up saying he ended up being the one or one of the members that pretty much became to run the gang, and that just led to everything ongoing to the situation that he's in currently. So now we're gonna try to go back as far as possible, but in covering Bloody Hatcher, one thing I noticed is you can't talk about him without talking about a close friend of his that I want to say is linked to a lot of the stuff that he's pretty much linked to. That gentleman is going to be a guy by the name of Charles Boo Thomas. Now, like I said, it's almost like you could consider them partners um, throughout the history. On a case that I pretty much got a lot of the information that I got, it it pretty much went into details saying that Thomas and Hatcher, along with another guy by the name of T Black, um, almost formed a partnership or a family or enterprise. And they referred to themselves as the family or the street family. And it said that they began selling cocaine in East New York around the mid 1980s. Initially, they started selling powder cocaine, then they switched to crack cocaine like right around 1987 because that's when it pretty much became more profitable. In 1985, Thomas, who I said was Hatchet's like right hand dude, he was 15. He introduced T Black, a guy by the name of his last name Hunter, to Hatcher, and they pretty much considered, I want to say, each other bosses. Hatcher invited Hunter to join the family, and that was pretty much the little collective that they had, and they would kind of bond together. I want to say Hunter, he first worked for Hatcher as a lookout. He protected the workers that was selling. He began managing like the more profitable drug spots that they had, and it said that the income that they was getting from the crack sales at that time was around 20,000 to 25,000 a day, and that's was for managing the spot. Um, that's the income that's coming in, and Hatcher was paying Hunter right around 8,000. I mean 3,000 to 8,000 per week for handling and managing that spot. Now, I pretty much only brought up them because you can honestly say some of the actions of Charles Boo Thomas is what initially brought Bloody Hatchet down, and it's hard to say that when somebody is responsible or might be linked to 30 murders. You would think, oh, it's just one thing, but that's pretty much what gained them heat from the authorities. But kind of before we talk about that, we're going to talk a little bit more about John Bloody Hatcher, and they said at the height of his drug dealing days, he was making millions. And he faced a life sentence, and he ended up turning state's evidence because due to the amount of murders that he had or was implicated in, he was facing the death penalty. Um, so it, you know how the game go. And I want to say they say he was arrested on May 13th, 2002. He agreed to a plea, and the authorities say he embarked on a 4-month confession that left authorities shocked by the murderous brutality. Now, authorities say during his 2-decade reign of terror, Hatchet and the Rugby Boys littered the streets in the heart of Brooklyn with victims and bodies. Now, the special agent in charge of the DEA in New York's office, John Gilbride, pretty much said John Hatcher was the crack epidemic, and he pretty much compared him to Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols, Kenneth Supreme McGriff, the infamous Harlem drug lord Nicky Barnes. Um, and but he's saying the difference with him and them. In their brief reigns of crack and heroin kingpins, Hatchet ring flourished like no other before the DEA finally mounted a 6-year operation buying $10 bags of crack. And then that ended up getting him along with some of the other stuff that we're going to kind of talk about now. We want to go into kind of the details of just some of the stuff. It's like when somebody have 40 murders, you're not going to be able to document each and every one of those. I don't even know I don't even know how he remembers, but hey, this shit is different. Um, the officer in charge of the investigation said that there was actually times that they had to stop him and say that's enough for today. I want to say special DEA special agent John Profetti or Profetti, and he pretty much recalls one situation where Hatchet described an assault in which one of his henchmen was stabbed, shot, choked, set on fire, doused with a pail of urine. They said the victim ended up surviving after he only pretended to be dead and ended up giving an interview to detectives. And Star Jones, who is former co-host of The View, who was at that time, she was Brooklyn assistant district attorney. And it said that when that man was released from the hospital, Hatcher paid two hitmen $5,000 to go and finish him off. So that's just kind of one situation. They talk about another situation that happened in 2000 actually January 27th, 2000. And this is going to be pretty much one of the things that got him on the radar, if the thing that did not seal the deal. Or I want to say pretty much the not even the biggest, but definitely one of the biggest things that I stumbled across. Um, on January 27th in 2000, it was a city bus driver. Um, he wanted to be a go-between, or now I guess let me get a little bit deeper because based on the investigation, it is deeper. He ended up being a go-between in a drug deal, and was killed by John Hatcher. But it gets a little bit deeper than that. So pretty much, it was a guy. The bus driver was a guy by the name of Pedro Newton, and he was a friend of Boo Thomas. They said that they had grown up together. And in January of 2000, Newton had acquired 100 grams of heroin from some Colombians, and he asked Boo Thomas to see if he could help him off it or whatever. So since Boo Thomas, they were in the crack game, they weren't in the heroin game. So since he didn't sell heroin, he introduced Pedro Newton to a guy by the name of Henry Booby Harley, who ended up, or who authorities said bought that 100 grams of heroin for 7,000 from him. Um, Now, after that deal was sealed, pretty much, Pedro Newton said that he was hoping to come into contact or to inquire. I want to say it was 600 grams of heroin. And he wanted to set up a deal to see if Booby was going to buy the heroin from him the same way he ended up buying 100 grams. So the plot that unfolded after that was Booby wanted Boo Thomas to set up Pedro Newton and pretty much have him killed so they can take the heroin. But what Boo Thomas does is he go to Bloody Hatchet with the plan, and Bloody Hatchet actually tells Boo Thomas to set up the deal with him where he's going to pretend to be the buyer. So they ended up killing this gentleman, taking the 600 grams. I want to say that's one of the murders that they confessed to. And the crazy shit about this, that actual crazy shit about this is, we never respect nobody that snitches, nobody that go against the code or none of that shit. But Boo Thomas and John Hatcher actually snitched, and they was on a case of somebody that was almost their underling. And with that being said, I it's who knows how many people that they ended up having put together. This is some like mob tie shit. That was one of the main things that kind of put the government on them, and it was also another scheme to where Boo Thomas, his phone number popped up in an investigation where hundreds of thousands of dollars of merchandise was, I want to say, stolen from a Home Depot in Georgia, which led, I want to say, postal investigators to start the deal where they would be buying these $10 bundles of crack from the Hatcher organization that ended up taking them down. And it's wow. You would almost think once a snitch, always a snitch. Back in 1991, Hatcher with this same organization was, I want to say, hanging with the mob and shit, and they mistaken undercover officers for rival drug dealers, and they opened fire on them, glazing one person. Bloody Hatchet ended up getting sentenced to 8 years for that, and he ain't confessed. He didn't. Who know? It's not said that if he was the shooter or what, but he didn't confess. He didn't tell on nobody, according to the information that I seen, and they pretty much like they treated it like a family. So they saying that it was different times when the other gentleman I spoke about earlier, T Black, he was arrested in '89, and they talked about how Boo Thomas raised money to bail him out because that's what people in the family do. And then they talk about when Hatcher was arrested in 1991. Um, Hunter, who was T Black, bought some drug spots for $70,000, and he made additional payments totaling almost $200,000 to Hatcher's wife and his father while Hatcher was serving his sentence. Um, they say when Hunter was imprisoned or T Black was in prison from 1994 to 96, Thomas provided Hunter's wife and his brother with money, and pretty much they was taking care of the family because that's that's pretty much what went on. So this shit just like is so deep, really, really like a movie. I'm almost sure we'll probably see a movie based on this, and it's surprising that it ended up going on so long with the amount of violence. That lets you know, I guess, the amount of fear, or I don't know, how they was able to cover it up for this long, or how it's kind of just hitting the mainstream. Like I said, uh, the shit really hit the news and the media in 2007. Um, Based on my research, the case in January 5th, 2010 is when it really unfolded. And that kind of what opened a glimpse of everything that was going on. But you know what it is. We're going to be back with some more shit. It's your boy Popalot. Mob, mob, mob ties.